Hey friends, it's me Alyssa, and I am back with Live and Local Atlanta. I'm joined by my incredibly talented friend. He is in your homes with health and wellness. He's a doctor, he knows what he's talking about, and he's here to talk about kind of what's happened with Atlanta post COVID and some of his personal journeys and memoir. I'm here with Dr. Dhaval. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me, Alyssa.
I love that you are here right now, and we're in kind of a weird space. I'd love to know what people thought 100 years ago when they were first dealing with the flu, exiting a pandemic type situation, because there are still some people who take COVID and the pandemic very seriously. We still see them masked up. We see a lot of people unmasked.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure there are people who went back to not washing their hands after using the
I
bathroom.
think so. I think you're right.
I know you people are out there. I do know that. I know you people are out there. So I just, want to talk to you about
Yeah.
your journey
Yeah.
as a doctor. It's not often that I get to speak with medical professionals who
Yeah.
have the chance to come on and share their journey like this.
Well, I appreciate the platform to being here with you. Atlanta is a very big healthcare city. So we have so many different healthcare systems. Many people come from the surrounding areas, even outside of Metro Atlanta, for the highly specialized care in Atlanta. So we have to remember that there's a lot of healthcare happening in Atlanta. We were definitely a hotspot during all of the COVID surges. We were very busy. Our healthcare systems were strapped. Our doctors, nurses, everybody involved was really strained. And I think it was a wake-up call for all of us of how fragile the system is. To your point about moving past the pandemic, I think it's relatively safe to say we are in a much better position than we were 4 years ago, 3 years ago at this time, and the vaccine has a lot to do with that. COVID is still around, but it's much less intense what we are seeing. I do recognize that there are those that are still masking, and that's perfectly okay. Some people still have a very compromised or decreased immune system that just really can't fight aggressively, and they need to protect themselves, and we have to respect that. For the majority of us, good hand washing, the appropriate preventive measures is really what we want to focus on. But for me, as a healthcare worker, it's really been a journey right now.
And I think that's so incredible. Aside from healthcare workers, I know I came in to work every day. I was with our news and talk department, and we had to come in every day.
That
And
too.
it was so odd seeing a ghost town of a city for almost 2 years, basically. Nobody here. Parking was great. Traffic was great. But it was so weird. Just nobody was here hearing these stories, and we just really didn't understand what was going on. Now, with I felt it, burnout. I know the medical community
Yeah.
certainly must have been
Yeah.
feeling that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So what is burnout? When we say, I'm burnt out, like I just don't want to go to work, I'm not feeling the passion anymore, I just don't want to do it. It kind of all encompasses that. And there's a little bit, or maybe even a lot, overlap between burnout and mental health challenges. For us in healthcare, the biggest challenge when it comes to burnout is most of us, majority of us, went into this profession to help people, care for people, navigate them through their well times and their sick times. But the way the system is with so many competing priorities, distractions, and also when we had the global pandemic of COVID, the strain that we saw, the burnout level became very high where we felt, including myself, and I talk about this in my journey in my memoir that I recently put out in November and published in November. What was that journey like for me? Mental health challenges were real for me. There were days coming home. I had a newborn who was born 2 weeks before the country shut down and a 4-year-old daughter at the time. My wife's maternity leave turned into caring for both of them. And, healthcare workers were giving it all day at the hospital, then coming home. How do we keep giving more? And that really was a climactic point for me where I talk about my own mood disorder that I went through, feeling depression, feeling anxiety, and how to get through that. And I had to recognize that it was a challenge, and I think that was burnout. I think it was mental health challenges for me, but it's important for me to talk about that because a lot of times I think people assume, well, they're doctors, they're fine, they're highly educated, they're trained, they're financially stable, what's not to like? And there's a lot of challenges that are still in our career, and I want it to be an open dialogue saying, look, you can still have challenges, you can still have mental health struggles, you can still not be perfect, but you can still be functional too. It's just acknowledging that that is an issue and getting the right help when you need it.
Oh, absolutely. And I love that you're saying that because I feel Right now, I'm kind of going through that struggle right now. I'm like, hey, I
Yeah.
don't have to be perfect. Let me just kind of make it. Let me just kind of get there little by little. And, I do want to talk about your memoir. Can we first and foremost tell people where can they get it?
Yeah. So the memoir is entitled Burning Out on the COVID Front Lines, a doctor's memoir of fatherhood, race, and perseverance in the pandemic. It is available wherever books are sold. Amazon and online is an easy, fast way to get it. Also in some of our local bookstores in Atlanta. And this is not a moneymaker for me. It's about using my voice, telling a story that I hope many can relate to, and I think they will. All of my proceeds, what I make, will be donated back to the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation, which focuses on destigmatizing mental health for healthcare workers, because a lot of us feel as doctors, nurses, all of these things, we can't struggle. We're not allowed to. It's going to take away from our job, our licensure, all of these myths out there. And this foundation really does a lot to fight against that.
I love that. Now, you do talk a little bit about, I guess, your journey in writing that down. Can you talk about what was the moment you thought to yourself, or you looked in the mirror and said, I need to start a conversation. I need to put a book together to start a conversation.
It's a good question. It really was during the pandemic when I saw so many of myself, my colleagues, people just like me struggling, and everybody was kind of skirting around the idea of being open, being vulnerable, and talking about it. And when I had these one-off conversations, let's say you and I are talking privately in an office when we're colleagues, and I open up saying, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what I'm doing it, I could see kind of the weight lifted off their shoulders, and they kind of brighten up like, you too, out of all people, you're struggling. And just having that openness and that vulnerability, and that's a strength, right? Being able to do that. And at that point, I realized that, and my journey being a dad, being at this point in my life where we're trying to do it all, so many political pressures going on, society, there's so much to talk about living in the South in Atlanta with race, the murder of George Floyd in 2020.
Yes.
That was the twin pandemic we were dealing with. And we think, oh, in the hospital, you're protected, you're not dealing with that. Oh, we are definitely dealing with that. Hospitals are micro societies. Everything that occurs outside the hospital is still impacting inside the hospital. So at that point in late 2020, early 21, I decided it's time to really put my ideas together. And with the help of a very keen literary agent, I was able to make my dream happen.
And I truly, I love this. And I think, I can understand where there's fear.
Yeah.
We see it a lot with the education profession, with teachers.
You
see them on TikTok, they're talking about burnout, and they're talking about they need more resources. So I can understand
It's so funny you say that, because I'm not trying to interrupt you, but
No.
teachers and healthcare workers, I've learned there's so many parallels.
Hand in hand. Yes. My brother and sister are both teachers, and
Wow.
I hear some of these horror stories from them, from
Yes.
other teacher friends, and I can imagine as a healthcare worker, I don't want, and it's not to take away from teaching,
Yeah.
but the level of craftsmanship and education that goes into the medical field,
Yes.
I can understand the fear of wanting to come forward
Yes.
because there's this air of prestigiousness, and there
Yes.
is prestigiousness with
Yes.
education and
Yes.
teaching that the general public doesn't acknowledge because it's not a doctor or they're not a neurosurgeon. And when they want to have that conversation, it's like, what do you know? You get summers off. So I think it's so incredible.
Far from the truth. The teachers, just to back them up, the teachers are meant to be strong. They can't show weakness.
Yes.
They can't be wrong. They have to deal with parents who are complaining, crying, this and that, these children who have so many needs, and they're giving all of that to them. And I don't think they're getting the credit they deserve.
They're not. And I oftentimes, I bring up my siblings often
Yeah.
in conversations, just because the credit teachers get is not there and what they're doing. And I don't know if the connection is not there that they're literally shaping tomorrow.
Yeah.
Literally, they're literally doing this. And so I think it's incredible that you had that moment where you're like, a conversation needs to be had because something needs to change.
Yes.
And I think that's really incredible.
Yes.
Now, I have to ask, you were just mentioning, your wife went on maternity leave during COVID, and that
Yeah.
kind of turned into the whole staying at home, caring for the kids. What's been your journey with being a young father during this time? And in comparison to like your childhood and how you thought
Listen,
fatherhood would be like?
It's quite different than what I thought it would be like. I often question how my parents did it back in the day with less technology, less resources, and still it felt like I had this fulfilled childhood that was great. For me, it's been a challenge. I love my children dearly. They are everything to me, and they know that, and we know that, all of us. But every day is a challenge. Every day is not easy, Instagram perfect. And the pandemic really proved that. One thing, I think it's a constant learning process for all of us in terms of what our needs are from a home front, from a school front, from what kids need, what parents need, and finding that balance. I think what my wife, who's also a physician, and I have learned is it's okay not to be perfect, and some days just getting chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes on the table is going to be enough versus trying to do it all. And I think a lot of us set ourselves up for this failure because we just want to do it all, do everything, and we don't give ourselves a break, and then ultimately none of us are winning. And I've lived that, and that's why I can openly say that.
I love that. I mean, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I don't have kids yet, but some days I'm like, all I can do is warm up a can of corn, make my little mashed potatoes, and make my chicken, and that's it. Close enough for the end of the day.
Yeah, and
It's
that's
like,
okay, right?
You
And
know what?
that's
It's the
okay.
thought that counts, and I do
Right.
understand those cliche sayings as I get older a lot better now. I'm like, oh, it's the thought that counts. It's like I did try my best.
You did try
so.
your best. You did try your best.
And I want to ask,
Yeah.
how are you kind of navigating this post-COVID world as a dad, as a doctor, and as a husband? How are you navigating a new role, if you will?
Sure. The biggest thing I think I've learned is I am imperfect in many ways. Mental health is a huge part of my life. I realized in my late 30s, early 40s that I needed to get the help that I now am benefiting from, and I'm spreading my voice for that. And I think it's really important. I think there's a lot of parents in my position in this age group, point in lives where we just feel like it was supposed to be different: career, kids, family, house. Now what, right? Why aren't we still feeling fulfilled? And there's a lot that goes on. So what I've learned in that is having these conversations, being open about our challenges is very important. From a career standpoint in healthcare, I have learned more and more there is nothing more important for me to do as a healthcare worker than to advocate for the patient. The system's really not designed to be 100% fail-proof and take care of all of us. So me at the front line, when I'm taking care of the patients that day, I'm all in and advocating to get them help, get them navigated the way they need to. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, and the pandemic certainly validated that. And then, on the home and life front, it's just trying to maximize a work-life balance. I think I'm definitely still a work in progress in that, but it's a priority.
I love that you said that, and that leads me to my next question, actually. And I think a lot of people don't realize you still have a lot of members of our older generations who believe doctor's always right. You don't question what the doctor says. And younger generations, we're taught to ask questions and to kind of stand up and be an advocate for ourselves. How can people kind of walk that world of, hey, I'm advocating for myself and I'm taking my voice and my rights for myself. Also, not disrespecting a doctor, though, as in the same right and token.
I think knowledge is power. You don't want to be a Dr. Google where you're diagnosing yourself on Google. You still need your doctors. You still need your nurses. We still need all of us. But say, these are the questions I have. This is what I was reading. Here's 2 questions I have. For my colleagues like me, all in healthcare, we always have to ask, what questions do you have? What have I not answered? And that's really important. You are never, I will say this, you are never wrong for advocating for yourself. Now, yelling, cursing, doing it in a way that's toxic or not professional, sure, that's not going to be amenable to anybody. But you are never wrong for advocating for yourself because the system has many pitfalls. No matter how much our heart's in it, the system can still not navigate you appropriately. But what I mean by that is there's too many cracks. This person's going to call you with this appointment. You have to follow up and do this. This medication you're sending to the pharmacy, is it really going to get there? What does it do? I mean, there's so many components to this. So that's why, to your point, you are never wrong to advocate for yourself.
Absolutely. I love that. Now, I want to switch gears a little
Please.
bit and go back into the book. Can we talk about, I guess, your creative method? I think a lot of people, when they hear doctor, they think science, they think math, they think logic. And what was it like kind of getting in touch with your creative side?
Yeah. So when I wrote the book, I first made an outline of, chronologically what happened from the first surge to that current state where I wrapped up the book. And then I also kind of weaved in, it wasn't only about COVID, it was about everything else going on in all of our lives. And I had kind of a framework, but it was really, honestly, for lack of better words, it was really cool sitting down and writing this out and making it come up and, really creating those scenes of what was happening, my feelings of what was happening, and the way it's done, I think, and I'm hopeful, it'll resonate with the readers because people that have read it so far are saying, wow, did we really go through all of that? I remember now doing that. And it's just kind of a blur, like, did this really happen to us? And I think, for better or worse, I think it was a very good exercise for me to get my thoughts out, very cathartic, for lack of better words. And knowing that people are receiving it in a way that they find therapeutic is so gratifying to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not a therapist, but I think that is like a human response to trauma. We just kind of blur it out, and then when there is something that reminds us or allows us the chance to think about that, it's like, oh yeah, that did happen. Oh yeah, we did go through something like that. Oh yeah, we did wear masks, and we were so scared that the germs were the size of our heads.
I mean,
just
we were
out
walking
in the world.
outside wearing masks while going on, nature walks or whatever. And
we just didn't know. And
we did things that didn't make sense at the time, believe me, but it was the best we could do at the time.
Like I said, this is my first time being able to sit down with like a doctor and, you opening up and sharing. And that is so special because, yes, I've spoken with doctors about, hey, wash your hands, flu, cold season, get your
general health tips, which I love giving too. Honestly, I love giving those. But, for us in Atlanta, sometimes we hear from these national doctors and they're great out there. They're all over the country and the world doing it. But, Atlanta's home for all of us, right?
Yes.
And there's so much happening in our city, which I'm passionate. I grew up in this city. And there's, like I said at the beginning of this, healthcare is a big part of our local Atlanta economy too and what's going on. And we're doing a lot, and I think it's great to hear from our local people.
I love that. Now, you've said it a few times now, so just want to kind of throw some rapid-fire questions at you since you love Atlanta.
Yes.
Favorite breakfast spot to go on the weekends?
Egg Harbor Cafe in Sandy Springs.
I've been to that one. I've been to that location. If you are taking your wife out for some cocktails, you guys worked a really long week or a long month, it's your planned date night, where are you going?
It depends on the season. It depends on the week. Right now, the choice would be the Select in Sandy Springs. Their bar is so cool.
Yes.
They have seasonal drinks, and it just feels like a whole different world in there. But that may change week to week what we're feeling. But right now, when it's like that last minute, let's just go out and have a drink, the Select, that bar is really cool.
Okay. Now, I know you've eaten at Waffle House. Everybody has. What's your Waffle House order?
Waffle House order. Waffle with butter, hash browns, smothered, covered, and peppered, and a Coke.
I love it. We almost get our hash browns the same. I get my hash browns smothered, covered, and I think diced is for the tomatoes.
Yes, diced.
Yes,
yeah, I don't do
yes.
tomatoes.
I love tomatoes. It's the Italian in me.
I hear you.
I love it. Now, last but not least, you have to quickly run out to the supermarket.
Okay.
Which one are you going to?
Publix.
Of course.
Publix. Love
there
it.
There it is.
Love
it is.
Always.
Yes.
The bakery. Oh.
Yes, there it is. Perfect. I love it. Dr. Dhaval, how can people get your book one more time?
Yep, Burning Out in the COVID Frontlines is available on Amazon. Also some local bookstores, Virginia Highlands bookstores, Barnes & Noble, and Buckhead, and I hope you'll check it out.
I love it. And how can people follow you on social media?
Yep, my Instagram is Dr. Desai, DOCTOR Desai, DESAIMD, and my website is DhavalDesaiMD.com.
I love it. This is Live in Local Atlanta. I'm your host, Alyssa. Make sure you download the free Odyssey app today. That's AUDACY inside the App Store. Once it's downloaded, favorite Star 94 Atlanta so you get notified of exclusive conversations just like this one with my incredible friend, Dr. Dhaval, by hitting the heart in the top corner of your screen. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with me, you can give me a follow across all social media at itsme_Alyssa D, and I will see you next time.